No, I can't get my picture, so. Well, doing you all a favor, you can't see me.
We're live, Mr. Chair. All yours.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Call meeting to order. Ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Seconder,
Paul,
move the second, is the agenda be approved? Question? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Any conflict of interest? The budget, next steps. So we'll start this off with what we might refer to later as my rant about this process, but I do have a few comments that I'd like to make just to kind of set the path for us today. So as your chair, I'd like you to know where I stand on finances of the Capital Region Service Commission. First of all, I believe strongly in collaboration. And more importantly, I believe we can make our region the strongest in the province. We have the resources, partnerships, leadership, and ability to achieve what some of the other regions only wish for. The collaborative model that will be funded by the budget we recommend will allow each of our communities to achieve goals and serve our citizens well beyond what we could achieve with our individual resources. And in that, I might remind you that in the big picture, the province is still our biggest investor and our communities are the beneficiaries. So what's our job today? I think we have to remember that our first attempt failed. I believe the job of the Finance Committee today is to recommend a budget to the board that reflects the mandate and the strategic plan, and to respond to financial or information concerns that were raised by directors at the special board meeting on October 26th, or that are put forward today. I see it extremely important that our focus is on the budget and not the overall mandate of the commission. While it's valid for directors or communities to raise mandate issues, it is not within the Finance Committee's terms of reference. If communities decide to vote against the budget on principle, there is little we can do at this table to change it. However, if we recommend a budget that will allow us to move mandates forward and achieve the goals that we established, we can have a win. Despite my wishes, please put your cards on the table. I have personally no desire to sit at another board meeting with a recommendation developed by consensus at this table and see that recommendation defeated on principle, not merit. We need to remember that we're functioning at the policy level, and the number of pencils used or the salary levels required by specific employees isn't ours to judge. We set the envelopes, and our CEO guides the organization through the maze that evolves. What some of our choices will be today, there are others, I'm certain, but remembering that this committee supported the original budget, and most directors did not raise specific issues before or after the communities reviewed the document. I believe that we have at least three choices. We can recommend the exact same budget as before and make sure each community has the information that they thought was missing before. We can forward a recommendation that reflects the budget amendment that was put on the table and seemed to have strong support before the vote on the main budget. Or we can suggest modifications to specific budget groups based on policy changes. I'm sure there are more options that will come up during our discussion. Thank you for tolerating this, and let's all try and move forward. So I'll ask our CEO to make the introductory comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and through you, Mr. Chair, and to the members present online. Thank you for calling this meeting. I think it's very important to understand that we've heard a lot, or I've heard a lot over the last few weeks of what we want, what we need, and what we're mandated to do. And we have to understand that we do have a clear mandate. We have a strategic plan to respond to those mandates. We have an implementation guide that was developed and by the members for the Capital Region Service Commission, along with our guiding principles and values. And, you know, this is a great one, a great example of our collaborative governance, you know, in terms of looking at this and respect and responsibility and how we move forward. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to reflect on what we need, reflect on how we move forward and what that looks like. You have a professional team of dedicated employees, some of which are in the room today, some of which you may have never met, you know, in some of the areas that we work in. But you have a strong, dedicated team with long-serving employees in many areas. And these employees want to implement the direction of the board. But in order to implement the direction of the board, we'd have to be able to have a budget to do so. And so hopefully today we'll get clear and concise direction from the finance committee in terms of what to return with and how that will move forward together. And I think if we listen and we learn and we hear one another and deliver our values, that will become very much needed. You know, there's some directors have told me there are certain things within the plan that we need. And then I get a call from another director saying, you know, that particular, you know, mandated service, whether in, you know, it doesn't matter the service, but we need to bring that group together. And how do I get a hold of the chair so that we can have further and better conversations moving forward about the impact that committee could have in our region? And it's not just looking at it from a singular lens, but from the whole region. And it was like when we had, I think when we had Dr. McClellan join us, we talked about, you know, physician and healthcare recruitment. And I think the more we're together and the more that we try and the more that we hear one another, the quicker, the better we'll advance for the region. And so what's good for one part of the region is good for all of the region. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair. And at this point, I'll ask you to turn it over to Mr. Fitzgerald or Don to give us an overview of what we're looking at and how to proceed from here.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are, you identified the three options that are before us. In terms of the mechanisms to make that work, there are several types of motions that would allow a board to look backwards in time, I guess is the way to describe it. You can have a motion to reconsider or to rescind a decision, and both of those deal with motions that have already passed. Or you can have a motion to renew a previous motion, and that is applicable whether the previous motion passed or was defeated. And that type of motion would allow the board to bring back what we refer to as the amended budget for debate and consideration. And it would set up a two-step process to do that. The first process would be a director, if inclined, would make a motion to renew that motion that was defeated. The board could debate that, and then there would be a vote on whether or not to bring that motion back to the table. At that point, that budget is under consideration again. The amended budget's under consideration again. It can be debated. Staff can provide more detailed explanation based on the feedback that we had at the special board meeting. And ultimately, you would deal with the motion and to pass it. If it were to pass, would take a 2/3 majority of the members present. And they would have to represent more than 50% of the population represented. That unfortunately, that doesn't work for what we'll call the original budget. The original budget was never disposed of by the board. It was amended, it changed. And so we can't look backward to that. We're going to look backward to motions that were actually made and addressed with. If we were to consider the exact same budget again, as a matter of fact, it has already been distributed to the communities. has already waited through the 45-day period. It would require simply a motion to introduce it, reintroduce it. In terms of specific modifications that could be made, that would create a new budget. And as a result, that budget would have to be distributed to our member communities and go through the 45-day period. That's the longest path that we have. Some directors may be wondering about and somewhat uncomfortable with a motion to renew and think, well, this will lead us to a world where we just do things over and over again and we can be obstructed. There are tools that are available to the board to prevent that type of obstructionist behavior. And they deal with what are called dilatory, absurd, or frivolous motions. And the chair is empowered to not accept motions that essentially follow the same ground over and over again by a small minority. So there are mechanisms for each of the three options that you've identified, Mr. Chair. The first two options that you identified can be dealt with reasonably in a reasonable time frame. The third one would start the process all over again.
Scott, if you would, one more question about the reconsider, renew, re-argue option. And I believe the mover has to be someone that supported the original motion.
That is true in the case of a motion to reconsider or a motion to rescind, where we have a motion that passed. In this case, we have a motion that failed. And so we don't have that hurdle. It's open to any director to make that motion at a meeting.
Right. So at this point, I think we should move our way around the table, and it's a little difficult for me to find that order that we could go in, but yes. So finance committee members who are Kevin Nicklin, David Hayward, Tim Fox, and David Blissett. So I'll ask Kevin if you would lead off with your comments from the committee.
Okay, my comments are pretty simple. If we believe in our strategic plan, I don't know, the original budget was wrote around that. If we basically don't give them employees to do their job, I can tell you how many jobs are going to get done. Not many. And that's what it was really about. You know, when you look at the budget, it was to add a few people here and there, and so that we could fulfill what we deemed our mandate was. So I'm in full support of the original budget.
David Hayward.
I would just like to expand on what Mayor Nicklin said with going with the original budget. That was, those decisions were made with the right strategic moves in mind, as well as the interests of the committee and everyone. So I would support the original budget.
Director Blissett.
The 45 days, another 45 days, I'm not interested in that, and I'm sure all of us municipalities are in the same zone here. Our CAOs have to have the budgets in I think it's first part of December, mid-November, I'm not sure the date, but I don't think any municipality can honestly finish their budget until they have what they're going to be sharing here on the costs of the Capital Service Commission. And I think we need that, and therefore I'm not interested in another 45 days. I wasn't on the finance committee when they presented the original budget, I've been put on a cents. And I would have to go back and say that I support the original budget from day one. I'm not sure how that's going to work because even the amended budget didn't work the other night then. But I do support the original budget.
Thank you. We did receive, Director Fox is not able to be here today, but I did receive a message from him this morning indicating that he would be supporting a budget with no more than CPI in the budget. That was his requirement. So perhaps we could go around the table. Director Powell, since we can't see you, we would like to hear from you.
Okay, great, as long as you can hear me. Well, I think our point was well taken, so I'm in favor of the amended budget.
Director Forsyth.
I'm in favor of the amended motion, which I voted on, yes.
Director Morrison. We can't.
I got you. Head on mute. Anyway, I'm in favor of the original motion as directed by our council.
Director Hart.
Hi, sorry I'm late. I'm going to go again with what my council has asked me to do again, in favor of the amended budget.
Director Wilson, Chair. Judy, are you on mute? Okay.
Yeah, I'm off. Quite a predicament here. I am really concerned with the amended motion again, because nothing is going to change in that, correct? So the way that it was presented, we were told that that's not how they wanted it. They just want the CPI increased. So if we go back to the table with the directors, the ones that voted against it, I can't see them voting in favor of it. We don't have anyone from the city on today, do we?
No, we do not.
Well, that I would be very interested to hear their take on it. You know, like if nothing's changed, are they going to still defeat it, vote against it? So I have quite a few concerns. Just a few comments. One I want to bring up, and this is what my CEO had written. And she wrote, the increase to the tourism budget should not be necessary as the city of Fredericton is providing that service. That's not correct, is it?
They're providing the oh, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I apologize, sorry. Mr. Chair, through you to the director. No, so the original contract was with the City of Fredericton Tourism. They became the regional destination marketing organization for the capital region, and therefore supplying services to all. They pay a share of that, but so does everyone else. So it's a pay for service, and we're paying for that service. And I believe in terms of this year, I could get you the number on that, Director Wilson Sheedy, but just taking him on.
No, that's okay, but I just thought that statement was not correct.
So are you with the amended budget or the original or at some other point?
Well, I talked to our treasurer this morning and he said he'd be with us voting in favor of the amendment if it just had the CPI added. And one other comment, the honorariums was 40,000 in the budget, and I believe for 2024 it went up to 90. Is there an explanation, John, on that, or?
Yes, there is, Director Wilson, I'm just looking, I thought I had my, note with me. It went up about, if I remember correctly, I don't think it was that much. How much did you say it went up?
I thought it was 40,000, went up to 90.
No, it went up to 90 from 60. It was about 27,000 increase, 27,000. And the rationale behind that was because we're having so many more board meetings, committee meetings such as today, committee meetings right across the board. We've recently held meetings on the infrastructure, economic expansion. We're holding more meetings. We have a robust meeting schedule coming up on community development. We have governance meetings coming up. We have oversight meetings every quarter. There's more and more that's happening. Public safety will start to be, they've already had meetings. They're setting a frame around what they're doing. We're going to have to be talking about regional transportation at some point. And I'm looking across all of the committees here. And, you look and we have 8 different committees that are structured. And the frequency in some of those is quite high and some of them isn't quite as high. But we definitely had to do that. And also we had we did have some increases. We had an increase that the board agreed to for mileage rate as well. And so we'll, those all play into that. So very modest increase for the amount of mandate that we're getting.
Absolutely. So, in going back to Director Corey, I guess we would be in favor of the amendment if it just contained the cost of the CPI.
So, Sean, I believe you had.
Good, thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to, no need for the tourism budget to go up, we do have a contract for that service, and it has built in it increases. And so, as a result of our contractual arrangement, we're going to pay more this year and more next year.
If I may, Mr. Chair, on top, just through you, through the chair, to you, Director Wilson, that both that and the contract for economic development services with Ignite are tied to CPI.
Thank you.
So, are there any additional questions or concerns to raise from those that have made their comments already? Director Morrison.
Yeah, well, I suggest that the finance committee meet with the directors that voted the budget down to find out what their issues were, and then if the finance committee can get to the bottom of that, maybe changes can be made so they would actually support the budget.
Okay. Any other comments?
Director Hayward. Hayward.
Oh, sorry, Director Hayward.
I just wanted to make the point of the fact that we should really have the city with the voting structure the way it is. The city of Fredericton should really be involved in this discussion, which is the only way we can actually move forward is with their involvement.
I believe the CEO can speak to some of the discussions that he has had recently with the city.
So I think, as most of you know, I've reached out to as many as possible since Thursday evening. And one of the conversations I did have was with Director Rogers. It was a very pleasant conversation, and it was more about information sharing. And in terms of that, I'm not going to try to speak for Director Rogers, but once we got into talking about what does that look like, what are committees doing, what are we getting on, I think the biggest stumbling or hurdle that she was feeling in that particular evening in terms of the vote on the 26th was simply the fact that she didn't feel that she had all the tools to explain what was in the budget. So I think if we look at it that way and prepare some better perhaps some better communication materials around that may satisfy those that were opposed to the budget. But I'm not speaking on her behalf. I want that to be clear. I just want to say that we did have a good conversation. It was pleasant, and it was a good information opportunity. And again, like I said, I'm not speaking on her behalf, and I can't surmise what what the city would do, but certainly seemed to have a better grasp after we spoke about a few things in terms of what was happening with different committee structures.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
if you went with the amended budget, is there an idea what you're going to cut right out of the budget? Because when we talked about this, it was to follow through with what we were, what our mandate was, what our strategic plan was. So now we're just going to go ahead and cut out whatever, or is there a plan for that?
So,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, through you to Director Nicklin and to the others, and we've been having internal conversations about what we can do under which budget structure. We'll take the direction of the board in terms of that to implement. It could have some real impacts in some of the areas. I think if it's okay with you, Director Nicklin, I'd like to call on Brett to talk about for example, regional transportation, if you could for a moment.
Sure. Thanks, John. Mayor Nicklin, I think what it would mean in the example of transportation, we've talked about volunteer drive services. A lot of the communities within our region have independently implemented those VDS services. I think many of the communities aren't aware of where that funding is coming from. And in some cases, they feel that they're paying for it themselves. That funding actually flows through organizations like ESIC, RDC, even in your case, I believe it was leftover funds with Greater Fredericton Social Inclusion. Those funding sources are running dry. Come December, the province, in line with local government reform, expects that funding to flow through the regional service commissions without any direction to move forward with a VDS service at the commission level. You can expect that those programs will most likely cease to operate. The funding will run out. Communities will lose their volunteers. Those volunteers are hard to get back again. And it may take 3 to 4 months to get those programs back up and running once we get approval to move forward with them. So in real terms, what it'll mean in that particular area that we're responsible for, you're going to have seniors that aren't able to make their medical appointments anymore. In very real terms, that's what I would expect to happen. And to give you an idea, Mary Kay is on a well-deserved vacation right now, but she could give me the exact number, but ballpark, by cutting that $30,000 out of transportation budget, that's what we're talking about. And for $30,000, we could roll out. We'd have enough funding with combined with the ESIC funding, with $30,000 and the approval of the board to go forward with it. We could provide VDS services to every community within the region. So it seems like a small number, 30,000, but that's the real world impact that we would expect in transportation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. So we have a CEO.
Please, through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Nicklin. And so Director Nicklin, we did, as you know, we've talked about, we wouldn't look at, or we may not be able to look at, the engagement of services for a coordinator under community development. That particular committee was the first committee that asked, how do you intend to bring forward all of the mandated, even to get a start on the mandated services that we've been challenged with under that, to bring forward with one full-time person and doing it here with staff on a part-time basis, because we're cutting up so much of their staff time. And Brett's a great example of that. His substantive role is to run the solid waste division, and he and his team down there, Joe and the team, they're doing a great job. But he's also on public safety, he's also on regional transportation, and these are great talent management and development opportunities for people to express this. And so we'll make, not to contradict Brett in any way, we're going to try our best to make sure that, you know, we certainly don't stop a service, but we will have to make decisions that are in the best interest of the RSC in order to provide those services that we have currently existing and to bring on anything new or additional.
Any additional questions or comments from directors that are present? Certainly, there are some of these areas where there really isn't a significant impact, but if we look at the contract areas with economic development and tourism, those are automatic that they're CPI. So we have, there's no choice there that will use up those funds, and it makes the pot a little smaller when you're then starting to try and distribute the other money through changes in the organization, some which are available to you and other changes that you may wish to make that are certainly just not available to you because of some legislative restriction or agreement or contract. So what I'm hearing is still a strong support for the original budget among a number of directors, and still a strong support for a change in that budget to only do CPI and a number of others. So since we really don't make motions or decisions at this point, we're working on consensus. I need to come back to the directors that are that are part of.
Yes, I just called them, and you probably should see that in your.
Oh, excuse me, Mike.
He's on the phone.
He's what?
He's on the phone. I
Oh,
muted
We
him.
had to take a call, so we muted him.
Yeah, okay. Good. I thought he was trying to.
He's back.
So I'd like to go around the table again with the committee members, and I'll start with David because
I support the original budget. We can't move ahead on CPI. And I did vote for CPI on the meeting. But I'm now reverting to the original budget, otherwise we cannot move ahead, like I said.
okay. Director Nicklin.
I support the original, but I support the original budget.
David Hayward.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I do have one question before I move forward. If we're moving back with the original budget, we will have to wait the 45 days. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, through you, I don't believe so. Nothing has changed.
Okay,
I
sorry.
believe there's a basis. I'll find a basis to have that introduced without 45 days.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, and I will go with supporting the original budget.
And we know that Director Fox has preference with CPI. And my position the other night was to be accommodating and to support the amendment. My original inclination was to support the original budget, and that's where I would be at this point. It's what we discussed at a level, and it allows us to move forward with the initiatives that we have planned. So it was interesting, not interesting, slightly confusing to me the other night as I watched the dynamics that some of the communities that actually supported the amendment then voted against the budget with the amendment in it. And I naively did not expect that. So I'll try and not be so naive this time, and I'm ready to support the original budget. Well. Pardon?
I don't think we've heard from Director Moore.
No, and the director force.
Oh,
We got on it, maybe?
Oh, okay. No,
no, they're not on the
so
committee.
you're just looking at the.
Well,
community members.
that's what.
So,
Certainly open to hear from any of the other directors that are here, but I believe the consensus of the committee at this point in time is to support the original budget. And so as your chair, that's what I'll be, unless we have some strong arguments that someone would like to put forward, that's what we would be making a recommendation to.
I agree with Director Hayward that, you know, probably should sit down. I leave it with our CEO. Maybe should go to the municipalities that voted against the amendment. Especially the city of Fredericton, and even like I know New Maryland did, I know and Grand Lake did at the time. I'm not sure of all of them, but I think they should be addressed and see what it takes to try to move us forward so we can get this behind us and move in a direction where we support these mandated lines from the province. And I would ask our CEO if he would reach out again and see what it takes for the naysayers to move this ahead.
So I believe it was Director Morrison that, among others, that may have made that recommendation. So that's a very reasonable one. So where would you be with that, Director Nicklin?
Well, I'd be for that we can work with it, but I really want to make sure that in the efforts of being collaborative, that we open up and understand that we really can't move forward and fulfill these mandates if we don't finance it correctly.
Director Hayward, just to check back with you again, as you're on board with going back to the community center. You may have been on, I said yes.
Yes. Three names.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, you have 3 minutes.
Oh, I have 3 hands. Excuse me, I don't see the hands.
No.
So,
Director Forsyth.
Director Forsyth.
Yes, I have no problem going back to the original motion. But when I left that meeting the other night, I was never so ugly in all my life after I left the board meeting. Because if you put an amended motion on there and then vote against the amended motion, like, I don't know about you folks, but I do a lot of work in the community and I hate wasting my time. And as far as I was concerned, that whole meeting wasted my time. I mean, for the city to put the amended motion, they brought it forward and then vote against it. And because they got 49% and then a couple others voted with them, then it's all done with. If we're going back to the original motion, if we don't have everybody on board except for the city of Fredericton, we're going another 45 days. So we're wasting our time. There has to be a sales job. That's why I went with the amended motion, because I thought that they had agreed, the city had agreed to move forward with the budget. But to say we're going back to the motion, the original budget, I have no problems with that. But I don't want to sit at that meeting and then everybody talk about it and then vote it down. Then we got another 45 days. So let's get together, sell the job that, you know, you don't have tourism anymore. So your tourism staff, they can do other stuff because you're getting paid from the Capital Region Service Commission. So if the communities that had tourism people, now we've put it off, that they can put them to somewhere else in their budget. But I mean, for us to waste more time to go at that sales job, when we go to that meeting, you got to know that it's going to be passed. And if it's not, then let's get it done right. That's my only concern. And I don't want to go through another meeting like that because I'm not sure what I may do.
Yeah. Director Powell, I don't see your hand up there, but I did want to give you the opportunity to speak if you're still with us.
I'm still here. I might be invisible, but I'm here.
The floor is yours.
I'm still going with the amended motion. I think we made a point, and like I said, there's no sense of extending it on, but we all, it's too bad the city of Fredericton isn't here or a representative for them. I don't know why there aren't, but this is pretty important issues we're dealing with, but I'm still going with the amended motion. The government's passing us mandates and expecting us to pay for them when we don't even know what the mandates entail. So that's all I got to say.
So am I hearing this correctly from you that you are ready to support the amended motion?
Yes.
Okay. So that wasn't fair of me, by the way, but that's sometimes what we do. Director Wilson Shea, I'm not sure what the machine tells me the order is, but you're on.
I would wholeheartedly request a meeting with my council, CAO, and treasurer in person. Because as Marty said, we have to do a sales pitch. And Marty, I agree with you. I was never so frustrated when I left that meeting the other night. A lot of things, but I'm not going to mention them here. You've seen everything that went on, and I'll tell you, I was very disappointed. So anyhow, it's a sales pitch. Whichever way you go, I have to have people come to before my council, CEO, and treasurer, and put everything on the line to them. And then they can ask the questions directly to staff members. Okay.
Director Morrison.
Okay, as we all know, the city carries a big vote, 49%. So if they're not on board, the city is not on board, plus one other will defeat any motions. I think the big thing here to do is where Mayor Rogers had said she had some misunderstandings, or she didn't quite understand portions of the budget. I think if the time was spent with her, maybe and her CAO, to go over the fine points and explain them well, so they'll certainly understand where the need is, then they could actually vote on the budget with their amendment in it. I mean, it was their amendment, so, you know, get it explained possibly to those guys so they understand what's going on. And if they support the amended motion, then that's all we need, is really one other municipality to support that, and it'll pass on through. So to me, the city's the key here in getting them on board.
Thank you. I did speak with Director Rogers after the meeting the other night. My level of frustration wasn't that high because the rest of my life was in such a mess that looked pretty good to me at that time. So, and her point was that it wasn't about money, it was about information. It was about clarity on decisions. It wasn't about the total amount of money. So I think that a discussion with the players that were concerned is appropriate, as we have talked about, and we can make that recommendation and get some clarity of that. That being said, I don't think we need another meeting of the Finance Committee. After that, we will empower our CEO and COO to move forward with those after those discussions and formulate a resolution to put in front of the next meeting of the board.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd ask just to clarify on the direction as to go out, meet with the communities that were contrary minded to the amendment or to the budget, and meet with them, and to also develop perhaps stronger communication materials for that, in order to hold those meetings and then come back and report back to the board. That'd be the.
I think so. I'm trying to think of the procedural issues around this committee and the recommendation. Maybe I was speaking incorrectly. Maybe we do need to have the Finance Committee return after you have that information, so we can have a consensus or have a discussion around the consensus that we have at that point, because we actually have two options sitting in front of us, and I guess it's our obligation to make a recommendation. And
I think that's right, Mr. Chair. The other thing that we have to bear in mind, after information sessions, staff will be in a better position to inform the committee as to the likelihood of any of the three options.
I think the other thing that has to be clear is that the only real negotiations that happen are at the board table. We make recommendations, not at your councils when receiving information. I think that's what's happening. They are receiving information, not positioned to debate the merits of one or another particular item, because that's not how our model works. Those discussions are supposed to take place at the boardroom table. So we will have another meeting of the finance committee, probably a Zoom meeting in between now and the board meeting, and we will develop a resolution.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Mr. Chair, Director Hayward has his hand up.
Excuse me, Director Hayward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask if you could communicate to all of the directors if there's concerns or questions prior to any meeting or prior to any voting process, that they air those concerns beforehand. They express if they're looking for clarity in any specific area, or where these funds are being budgeted in this direction versus that one, or why a specific increase. They have the materials in advance, and they can ask those questions to whoever might be involved. And that would kind of prevent us from spinning our wheels for a little while.
I agree. Yeah. A majority of us are really sitting at the table at the moment, so that takes care of a lot of it, but you know, we can certainly raise it with the rest of the directors.
The majority's here, but the big majority is not.
That's right. Okay. Any further questions before we revert back to the committee and ask for their final questions and move to an adjournment? Nothing. So we return to our committee meeting, and I would propose that we're ready for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded, question, all in favor?
Aye.
We are down and out of business. Thank you all for your time and patience and working through this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.